One of the best startups I ever invested in got me thinking deep about my anal sex habits. You picked this talk, get ready. For context, they closed over $500,000 in their pre-seed. Taboo investing isn't fringe, it's foundational. It's essentially health tech, but if we dig deeper, it's about longevity. Investing in my 3 S's of taboo spaces, sex, substances, and systems, is not only financially viable, but spiritually valuable beyond recognition. So, what do we mean when we say taboos? Firstly, taboo roots its etymology from Polynesian languages, like tapu in Tongan and taboo in Fijian, meaning sacred or forbidden. It was, surprising plot twist, white people, particularly James Cook and his European colonizers, who misinterpreted it to mean bad or dirty. This is why taboos are both sacred and shamed. Taboos are spaces society wants to suppress, yet they can't stop bloody obsessing over. Taboos are often where power, pleasure, and potential are hidden. An old one we're probably all familiar with is evolution. The taboo challenged was religious orthodoxy. Darwin was blasphemous. The impact? Rewriting our understanding of life, time, and humanity's place in nature. The insight? Challenging the narratives of those in power can lead to scientific revolution. And something making more headlines over the last few years, though often considered one of the first taboos, is menstruation. The taboo challenged was being shamed and feared for something so natural, often excluding women from leadership and ritual. The impact today, fueling innovation in femtech and education. The insight, when we invest in bodily truths, we can drive both dignity and equity. Now, it's a bit taboo of me to be on slide 7 and not introduce myself. And maybe you're wondering, how can I empathize with taboos? And why is this bedazzled homosexual in short shorts on stage talking about taboos? And if you get this reference, you're my new bestie. Well, I am a walk-in, often prancing taboo. I'm queer and grew up in a cultural diaspora where that wasn't accepted. I've spoken about dick pics on LinkedIn and helped a family office build an early-stage due diligence model in the same day. And until last year, I was leading our venture team at Bain. God, look at that corporate filter. Delivering VC as a service, business building, helping corporates, investors put capital in new innovation verticals, and advising founders on scalable ventures. which, don't get me wrong, was amazing, yet I still like to describe myself as a bit of an anarchist, righteously angry, wanting to fuck up the system. Champagne socialist meets, clearly, a very confused capitalist. So, I'm learning to invest in embracing and evolving with my own contradictions, while also investing my professional time to consult and coach founders building for systems change, and advise investors and organizations building for a sustainable, in all of its meaning, and equitable world. So, for the investors I haven't already scared off, let's unpack my sickness, which is my taboo obsession with alliteration. Sex, substances, and systems. The unholy trinity, if you must. These taboos are rooted in basic human truths. You could argue the TAM, total addressable market, is unlimited. But let's get sexy specific, starting with sex. The total addressable market here is predicted to hit $199 billion by 2030. You may remember that sweet story I started with about my anal sex habits. It was the startup I invested in called Polari Labs that sparked that thought. The problem they're tackling is unhealthy and potentially dangerous anal douching. The solution? A first-of-its-kind able, underpinned by science, to foster intimacy and spontaneous anal sex. The impact? Revolutionizing the lives of queer and non-queer folk alike, with even more potential medical advances for anorectal health. Another startup I've invested in is Link, recently closing over 1 million. The problem they're looking at is revenge porn, sextortion, and the little control you have over your intimate content. The solution? A unique cybersecurity-style product giving you control, protection, and simplicity in sharing your nudes, even after they're sent. The impact? A radical shift in how we think about and share our content in sex, dating, and love. So let's be real. Most of us have sex. We all came from it. Sex is arguably the most natural, intimate, and consistent part of our human experience across time, culture, and identity. But what if we saw sexual wellness not just as indulgence, but as infrastructure? These companies are not titillating side bets. They're technologies of liberation. Now, for the second S, any mind-altering substance. And this doesn't just mean tripping balls on acid in Brazil, which was something I did do with a friend somewhere here in the audience, though. The TAM here is constantly growing because regulation and research is constantly evolving. $99 billion by 2027. Now, what does this remind you of? No, it's not a screenshot from the movie Scarface. It's actually sugar. Because the tripping most of us do every day is on legal substances. Sugar, coffee, that overpriced £20 cocktail tourists will be paying for in Shoreditch later tonight. But this startup is Zaya. The problem they're tackling is conventional approaches to improving nutrition often substitutes ingredients, leading to less tasty food. The solution? Harnessing natural enzymes to convert common ingredients into healthier forms after consumption. This impact is huge. Biological transformation, using nature's catalysts to change how our bodies interact with food. Yet, there are substance taboos we still haven't discussed. So as predicted, I will now talk about my time doing ayahuasca in the Amazon. Psychedelics as medicine is taking flight, but it's so bloody old. They found ayahuasca traces in 1,000-year-old pouches. Candidly, for me, I'm still processing my journey. It was transformative in a setting and cultural context I never thought I'd experience, let alone talk about here. I have this awareness that I'm still struggling to grapple with. Love literally filled my very being, which is beyond any rational business decision making. Indigenous wisdom is absolutely necessary for healing. But if we do want to look at traditional data, studies have shown over 80% of users showed clinical improvements from previous psychiatric disorders. As for myself, I'm now free of antidepressants. Now, I know it may feel like these truths are still hidden in the Peruvian rainforest, but change is coming. Here are just 3 examples. Can a West African shrub help traumatic brain injuries? The co-founder of Google seems to think so. Sinera received $15 million from Catalyst 4 last summer to unpack these biotech insights. Psilocybin data on depression and anxiety has gotten huge traction. Compass Pathways closed a Series B round to develop COMP360 for treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, and anorexia. And finally, our lovely NHS, which has trusts across the country now offering ketamine for treatment-resistant depression. But there are still things we must consider. How do we translate indigenous insights? Healing is communal, but we still often overly focus on the individual. We cannot blindly apply Western and colonial logic to create usable insights. We can have more clinical trials, but do we have reverence for investing in what really matters? And finally, maybe my favorite, because it's so all-encompassing, systems. Systems for neurohealth, systems for resistance. Particularly difficult to calculate this one. if you look at the entire space, we're looking at around $1 trillion US. I love working with super smart founders in this space, building in health and other areas of impact to translate and position what they're building for the right audience. One of those founders is building NX10. The problem, misunderstood and underutilized cognitive performance with our ever-growing, poorer mental well-being. The solution, using your passive phone usage to detect responses to emotional states and the feelings of users using neurosymbolic AI. The impact, emotionally informed AI, which can extend and enhance human lives. But for me, systems goes way beyond bio. It's fundamentally a social science too. Why aren't we investing in breaking some systems too? Challenging power structures, where they sit, how that power is exercised. Not just decolonizing our thinking, but re-indigenizing to reimagine our futures. Unpacking how we build communities and how power dictates how certain communities barely survive or are allowed to thrive. There are no quick startup solutions to these problems. But I've worked with some amazing founders building in these spaces. From blockchain to enhance drug transparency in supply chains. Stopping unsavory characters selling counterfeit pharma products that should be saving lives. Or AI as a truth seeker, tackling the wave of tech-enabled fascism with the godfather of AI himself saying we are on a dangerous path, becoming worse and worse if profits are not distributed. So we're back to all of ours, particularly mine as a confused capitalist / champagne socialist, biggest taboo of all, our own human contradictions. This is why taboos are critical to the human condition, and subsequently, the investors of today and tomorrow. Unpacking and processing our taboos, understanding and sitting with our contradictions helps us explore where to ethically invest. For all investors, builders, and friends in the room, here are some final thoughts on framing this approach. The investment realities are that money still matters, but so does meaning. Sex is high volume, consumer facing, with low upfront capital needs. Substances have moderate to long return of investment cycles, but higher payoff. Systems have the potential for breakthrough innovation, displacing entire value chains. But with the right sourcing, smart selecting, and intimate servicing, the playbook for sustainably scaling these ventures can work. Yet still, VC is still a tool. It's not gospel. Not all taboos need to become unicorns. Some are zebras, profitable, ethical, and still impactful. Returns can be financial and cultural and systemic. The smart LPs, bold investors, and radical founders know only tracking the internal rate of return means you're missing out. Missing out on the full spectrum of ROI. Now, is that an inherent capitalist contradiction? Sure. But if we don't explore alternatives, we're stuck. Stuck in the crux of obsessing over our very human condition for betterment. And how do we categorize this innovation for betterment? I published this model many moons ago for the World Economic Forum. Most startups fall in the incremental or architectural category. Sometimes disruptive, but rarely radical. This is where many taboos fit, and where longer-term returns sit. And ultimately, we all have the real desire for intentional impact. More alliteration, by the way, if you didn't spot it. Sex decreases stigma, increases autonomy. Substances reduce mental health woes. Systems can rebuild structures. These aren't side bets. These are the front lines of human thriving, enhancing our longevity. So guess what? Taboo investing goes beyond the maths of venture capital. Which sounds like an odd way to conclude a mini investment memo for the quote new VC. A title I had some words on, because it wasn't the original I submitted. The right model isn't only VC, but all models need to be serious about systems change. If we build and invest from the space of ethics, love, and decentralizing power, all companies and movements striving for impact will be better. So, let's unlock taboos as foundational, not fringe, because it financially makes sense, because we are spiritually hungry, because it's our end goal to thrive. Do you want to invest and build for collective longevity? If yes, the next question is when, not if. So let's chat. And I'll leave you all with my original keynote title, Taboo Investing is for Transformational Impact. Thank you.